Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina from Core Connection. And this week we are going to get into not for everyone, and that's okay. Yes. So this is our second episode of our self-confidence series. We will wrap it up next week. So we will explain the subcontext of this topic after our parenting moment, which I have this week because it ties in really well with what we're going to be getting into today. So my 8, soon to be 9-year-old had a friend's birthday party this last weekend, and she wanted to invite all of her friends. So we sent out invitations like 2.5 weeks ago. She took the invitations to school about 2 weeks before the party. And then I also texted people and reminded them like the week of, like friends whose parents I have the number of, right? I was texting those people, hey, there's a party this weekend, hope you can come. Those people came, but no one from her school came. So this party was just like 2 days ago, and she doesn't seem terribly upset about it. She seems okay, and she was happy with all the kids that did come. She had a really great time, but I thought that would make for a really good discussion and a really good segue into this of what do you do when you invite a bunch of people to a party and they don't show up? That's a really hard situation, and it's a really emotionally painful situation for your kiddo to be in. So I'm going to throw this back to you and see, how would you guys handle this situation? Like, let's say nobody could make it to her party and we had all this preparation and all of this fun stuff planned and nobody shows up. How do we deal with that?
I think what's important is getting out of your own head. As parents, we're going to have thoughts about this situation. Not doesn't necessarily mean our kid is, right? Mm-hmm. So we could be projecting that onto them with our thoughts and how it's bothering us and what we're making it mean. Mm-hmm. So maybe just questioning what you're thinking about it and how that's affecting you. But if you want to have a conversation with them and talk to them and see where they're at and what you're thinking, even just basic like, hey, what did you think about your party? Did you have fun? Did you enjoy the friends that came? Then you can kind of fill out where they're at with it before you make it into something that it's not.
I love that advice, because that may have been what I was doing in this instance with this party, because she still had friends and she was happy with it. And I haven't said anything to her, but I love that advice because that is a good lead. And how do you feel about it? And you know, what was your experience? So I'm not just projecting, oh, you invited all of these friends from school and none of them came, you know, exactly. And not right. So don't create an emotional situation where there doesn't need to be one, which is why we call these parenting moments, because, you know, parenting it's very rarely just a straightforward, simple answer in these kinds of situations. And so I think oftentimes having an outside source or an outside opinion can be really helpful in these instances.
What's interesting about this situation is what you shared, everything you shared was your thoughts. So what are you making it mean about this situation?
Yeah.
Because really, you could probably just take a step back and think, oh, maybe those invitations are still sitting in the backpack, because I personally haven't looked in my children's backpack that got out of school 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So some mom could be looking in a backpack next week and going, oh, shoot, I didn't know about this party. So there's lots of likely situations and scenarios that could have happened to those invitations. But all of this that you're creating is coming from your own thoughts about those kids not showing up.
Yeah, I love that there's a consideration here, because there's 1,000 different possibilities, right? Even if the invitations did make it to the friends, did the friends have the wherewithal to share those invitations with mom and dad? Did they just forget because it was 2.5 weeks out, and to them that was an eternity away, and so they just didn't worry about it? Now they've forgotten. Not because they're careless, but because they're children. And that's what we do when we're children. And we don't always remember those kinds of things. So you could analyze it for yourself. But yeah, that conversation with the daughter is the key place to start. And certainly not starting with putting her into a victim mode by saying, oh, but all of these friends didn't come. Are you okay? But the question is, like Selina said, like, how was the party for you? What did you think? Did you enjoy those friends? You got some nice gifts, or you played some fun games, or whatever it is. But if you put her into victim mode, she may make it mean more than it originally did to her.
Yeah, great advice, which fits in very well with what we're going to talk about, which is raising teens who know their self-worth, not just what others want them to be. So a big part of this is helping kids to figure out who they are as an individual and being true to themselves without compromising their own beliefs and still being able to make friends, right? Okay, so what we want is we want them to find their own self-worth. We want them to be authentic, and we want them to have emotional strength. And we want that derived from within them and not from their friends and what their friends think they should be. And so part of the reason why this party fits into it is, well, you're not for everybody, and that's okay. Maybe this is a good indication that people you thought you were friends with maybe aren't actually good friends. And not that I want to project that onto my 9-year-old daughter, because in this instance, it is way, way more likely that, as Jeremiah said, that the invitations got lost or people forgot about it. But like, let's say this is your teenager that this happens to. That's going to be a really painful lesson for a teenager, but it's a really good indication as to nobody showed up, nobody called, nobody did anything. Are these really true friends, and how we can help teens navigate past that? So, but I want to start with explaining the very important developmental need for peer approval during adolescence, because that is really critical. And a teen's worst nightmare is being ostracized by everyone at school, right? Is, oh, I have this really embarrassing thing that everybody knows about me, and I'm going to be a social pariah at school. That's terrifying to a teen. Or not conforming. And I'm not talking about things like, oh, I don't have the latest clothes, or I don't have this latest fashion trend. It's more like people are going to reject me because of my beliefs, or because I think this way, or because I do this thing. That can be terrifying for teens. And so our goal as parents is to help them find a way to be true to themselves, and possibly facing social ostracization if that's what happens. So I think of my high school experience, and I was sometimes mocked for my religion and for my beliefs. And thankfully, I had a really good group of friends who respected and supported me and my beliefs. But it was difficult kind of in the early years, and the kind of, I guess, the early adolescence, maybe 7th or 8th grade. I struggled with it a little bit because I wanted to fit in. And so I was willing to compromise my beliefs in some instances to fit in. So let's start there, distinguishing between fitting in and belonging. Tell me your guys' thoughts on this.
I think the first part that we need to look at is understanding the developmental phase of an adolescent, of a teen. And that is this identity versus confusion role and trying to figure out who they are. And a big piece of that is this process that we go through to try and become independent of our parents as teens. And we want that autonomy. So we start looking to our peers for acceptance in different areas of our lives, right? Like, we try different things on and see how people respond. And that's kind of what's happening for teens, is they're trying to figure it out. And so sometimes teens will start to conform to what their peers think is right and good, rather than staying true to themselves. And so that's kind of the difference between belonging and fitting in. When we fit in, we make changes to fit, versus we belong because we're a human being or a person, or these are our friends. And so it's a real challenge sometimes for teens to go through this process, because it is painful. And, we start off in grade school with, everybody can be our friend and we don't really care. We move into junior high, and man, those separations start, right? We have some that mature faster and move away from playing with things like toys, like cars and trucks and dolls and Barbies, into more teenage appropriate activities. And it's just a process that varies depending on what's happening at home for you, your maturity level, things like that. And so we go through this process in junior high where we're only friends with certain kinds of people.
Yeah.
And it was explained to me by somebody else. I don't even remember who it was now, but when we start to move into this teenage realm, we're looking at cool factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
If this person will help raise my cool factor to everybody else, then I want to spend time with them. If they won't, I may not want to spend time with them. And it could be a friend that you've been friends with for 3 or 4 years in grade school that all of a sudden you're like, ooh, I'm seeing that they're not making all the marks socially that are going to be important to me. And so I might actually work hard to fit in by betraying that friendship and becoming somebody I'm not, because I'm afraid my cool factor will decline if I'm known to spend time with this person who's doesn't have a very high cool factor. And so it's a difficult process that they go through, trying to fit in, trying to belong. And as parents, we want to help them create this sense of belonging and acceptance within our homes.
Yes.
That is not needed. They don't need to try and fit in at home. And we can actually aggravate some of those things as parents if we try and force kids to be something they're not and that they don't want to be. And sometimes parents do that. Think sports. That's kind of a big one, right? Like, I always want my son to play football. I played football. And so I want him to play football, and he's going to be, a tight end or a wide receiver or whatever that might be, but he might not have any interest in football. And so having that space at home where they belong, regardless of their interests, hobbies, looks, desires, or whatever that is, they get to fit in at home no matter what. That's where we want to start, having a place for them to learn belonging. They belong because they're people, not because of what they may accomplish or may not accomplish.
And that can sometimes get tricky because you can get so excited when your kid gets into some sort of an activity that you maybe were into, and you're like, oh, yes, got it. I got my football player. I got my soccer player. Maybe they try it out and they hate it. That happened to me. I was so excited for my oldest to get into soccer, and she was really excited, and she did it and it was a longer season, and she absolutely hated it. She hated it. And I would not let her quit in the middle of the season. I'm like, nope, you made a commitment. You're going to do it. But it was a little disappointing because we want our kids to be active and involved. We don't really care what it is, but we want them doing something that is not sedentary, right? And, and she's learning that sports just isn't for her. She doesn't like sports. And that's okay. We're not going to try to make her be somebody she doesn't want to be. So do we still teach her, obviously, the importance of taking care of your body? Exercise is very important. You've got to be active. Yes. But I'm not going to push her into sports. It's not for her. And that's perfectly okay.
Definitely.
Well, Liz, you learned that lesson faster than I did. We have our older son. He enjoyed playing sports up until a certain age.
Yeah.
Just, city rec leagues or whatever. Nothing super competitive, but it was good to be involved in things. I actually am not really a sports person, didn't grow up doing many sports. So it was a fun opportunity. And honestly, in my mind, boys play sports. And that's what our neighbors did. And that's all the people I knew did, was boys played sports. So I try to support and encourage my son to play sports. But he got to a certain age and he came to us and was like, can we all just admit I'm not good at this? And I really struggled because I was, in my mind, boys play sports. So what is my son going to do? What's he going to be involved in? What's he going to have? And it took me some time to really understand and recognize that he had some really good qualities in different things. He started being involved in robotics and he absolutely loved it. And it was so great for him. And he tried other things. And later in high school, he even started a lightsaber club so that they could take their lightsabers to school.
That's amazing.
Kids loved it. Loved it. And I will be open and honest. It took me some time to open up to that thought and idea of my son can be good and be involved and do other things in his life besides sport. And he could be an awesome, fun kid that maybe not everybody understands or accepts, but when I accepted his oddballness, like I like to call it, I had fun with it. And there's a whole new world that I've been able to learn and become a part of because of him, and understand a lot more things in life beyond sports, because I was able to open up my mind and understand him and the things that he gets excited about, and put forth that effort to be able to have those things a part of our whole family to be supportive and excited about.
Which is exactly what we're talking about today, is helping kids to find their self-worth and to find who they are, to find their own autonomy. And they're going to try out lots of different things. They're going to try on lots of different hats, right? Your kid tried sports. That didn't work out for him. So he found something else. And to be clear, it is good for kids to be involved in something. I believe a couple weeks ago, we discussed not overscheduling your kids, which is equally important. But yeah, find something that they can be involved in, because that does help build their self-confidence, is when they find something, an activity that they can enjoy and that they can do with other people. It's really good at helping build the identity. And it doesn't matter what it is, obviously, as long as it's safe and healthy, right? But it can be anything, whatever your kid is interested, yeah, go for it, support them. And that's going to help them form and figure out who they are.
I should put a disclaimer. I'm not against sports. I have other kids that are involved in sports, and they really like it, and they're good with it too.
But neither of us were very involved in sports. And I think here's a good segue into this idea of the role that different things play in developing who our children are. And there's a couple of big factors right now that influence teenagers. One of those is social media. Another one is like the school culture and what's happening at the schools that they're attending. And the other really big one is friend groups, right? So if we look at things like friend groups, man, friends are so important. And the types of friends and the types of groups that they're hanging out with will definitely influence this self-development of our children. And so it's something we want to pay close attention to starting at an early age, and helping our children to learn how to choose friends and to be a part of friend groups who support who they are as individuals. Again, that sense of belonging to that friend group versus trying to fit in, because there's an emotional cost of trying to fit in and being someone else. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But school culture obviously plays a role. You know, if you think about like high schools in maybe Texas, for example, I don't know for sure, but we hear a lot about football, right? So, you know, in Texas, the culture may be really, really heavy in sports. And if you don't play sports, you could kind of be ostracized a little bit or have some challenges there. Or maybe in the area we're at, agriculture is a big one, right? So you might be pressured by friend groups to move into that agriculture world and join FFA or 4-H or whatever it is. And then, of course, social media. Here's another big kick against social media from me. And that's what you're always going to get from me with social media and kids. The younger we give our children access to social media, the more profound that effect's going to have on them and developing their identity, because they're going to develop what self-worth comes from a basis of fake, because social media is fake. Certainly there's real stories, but we don't share the true nature of who we are and what we're doing on social media. We've talked about this before, right? The picture perfect images of what we see. You know, we might see this beautiful cake that some wonderful mom has been able to bake, but if you zoom out and see the picture of her kitchen and her child and her own self not put together, and the disaster of a mess that's going on, you would think that, man, this woman's got it all together. She's got 3 kids and she's able to make these beautiful cakes. But if you look at her house, she's not even capable of managing her own household in the moment. Yet we're comparing ourselves to this beautiful, perfect cake that she's made. And our teens will do the same exact thing, but even at a higher level, because they won't necessarily have that capacity to expand beyond that picture perfect image that they're seeing. And so they'll start to develop that self-worth, and they will attempt to make changes in themselves to become something that they belong to, but really they're just trying to fit in, which would take us right into this emotional cost of trying to be someone else. And this is something I see in my work, is individuals who I've had multiple individuals tell me things like, well, I just worked so hard to be this person. I've forgotten who I am, and I don't know how to figure out who I am again, because they lose sight of who they are as people, as human beings, because they've tried so dang hard to fit in. It kind of destroys their own image of themselves. And that cost is, holy cow. And we end up with depression and anxiety and this like constant worry of what everybody else thinks of me, instead of having confidence in who I am and being able to go out in the world and be me.
Right. And so I want to backtrack a little bit on something I think that's important that you hit on, Jeremiah, and the idea of social media, and also pointing out that this can happen beyond just social media. And it does happen beyond just social media. So any media can often portray things that kids think are desirable. So you think of movie stars and or other athletes and how influential they can be in their looks, particularly, right? So you think of a popular singer and how maybe they have this picture perfect body, and teens might start to think, I need to look like that. That is so common for teens to do, or a popular actress or whatever it is in the media or that's popular. Kids will often latch onto that and think that's who I need to be. And so it's important to have open conversations and to explain things to our kids. Most people, they don't look like that. And when they do look like that, it's usually because they've spent thousands of dollars on cosmetic surgeries. Or if it is an athlete they admire and they do start talking about their physique, that's a great teaching opportunity to say, yeah, this person does look really great. They're in really good shape, because they work really hard to take care of their body so that they can perform at that levels. So there's all sorts of ways that we can help our kid find a sense of who they are and find a sense of belonging. Because if they do want to be a fantastic athlete, and if that's who they want to be, great. You can help teach them and help them learn. There's so much more to it than just talent on the field or talent with the ball or whatever it is. There's making sure you're taking care of your body, you're eating well, you're exercising, you're stretching, you're getting good sleep. You're also taking care of your brain. You're not neglecting your schoolwork to pursue your sports. So just a lot of really great teaching opportunities that can help kids find a belonging, because when you belong, you're accepted for who you are. And I was fortunate enough to be able to find that in my high school. I was the only member of my religion, of my specific church, growing up in high school. And I was very fortunate in that I was able to find a group of friends who accepted and respected my beliefs. And they didn't try to pressure me to give up my beliefs, right, for any social situation. And so helping kids find that niche in whatever it looks like, whatever capacity they're looking for, can be a painful process, but it can also be a really critical one.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the just media in general, not just social media. Mm-hmm. Social media tends to be a little bit more profound.
Yes.
In the sense that we kind of become addicted to it and spend just crazy amounts of time on it outside of regular media. But you're right. Other medias can have a very significant and profound effect on their development and their desire to fit in rather than belong. So watching that and watching what they have access to is a critical piece for parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to discuss signs that your teen may be struggling, because these are important. And again, I think it's also important to understand the difference between just typical, teen struggling kind of day to day and normal struggles, and there's a problem we need to address. So here are some signs. If your teen is over apologizing, if they have difficulty saying no, if they're seeking constant approval, they're changing opinions to match others, or they have anxiety around rejection or criticism. And again, each and every one of these is normal for teens to experience at some point in their lives. But if it's a consistent, ongoing problem, then you need to start doing some more research into it, figuring out why, figuring out what's going on, seeing if you can determine a cause as to what the underlying problem really is.
Yeah, and that's not a comprehensive list by any means. There's a lot of other signs. We're looking for changes in mood and behaviors and in different areas that could be indicators. They're just signs. It doesn't mean that something's wrong. It's just a signal to you as a parent to say, hey, what's going on here? Is there a difficulty? And checking in with them. And I think we get back to what we always talk about, which is where our business name even comes from, right? Core connection. We've got to have those core connections with our children. If we have those connections, we are more likely to be able to have them open up about the difficulties they're experiencing and be able to have those challenging conversations with them about what they're experiencing as far as fitting in or belonging goes in their social lives.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so how do we teach our kids to have self-confidence? I want to tell you that self-confidence comes from loving yourself for the good and the bad. So finding lots of opportunities, not just like when everything's going great and your kid's doing things great, but also things that they're not so great at, or they make mistakes, or they have problems in their life. You can help them to learn how to love themselves for all of them, the good and the bad, the mistakes and the good things that they do, right? And so self-confidence comes from trusting you will do what you have said you will do. Taking care of yourself, being your own best friend. So helping our kids realize and understand that, what's our title? I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. And literally saying those words in situations. Your daughter has her birthday party and nobody shows up. We literally say those words back to our brain. I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. So what matters is myself and what I think of myself. Do I show up for myself? Do I be my own best friend? Do I love myself for who I am, the good and the bad? That's where true self-confidence comes from.
And this is something even adults can and often do struggle with.
Lots of adults struggle with this.
Yes. Is loving themselves for who they are, including their mistakes. And I think a great way to build self-confidence in your kids is to practice openly self-compassion, because self-compassion is going to go a long way towards building self-confidence. You can say things to your kids like, this house is a mess today because I'm just not having a good day. I'm really tired, or I don't feel good. And so I didn't do the dishes today. And that bothers me a little bit. I don't like seeing a sink full of dirty dishes, but that's okay. They're still going to be there tomorrow. And I'm giving myself a pass because my mental health and my physical well-being is more important than a sink full of dishes. And that's just one example. You can tie it into anything. I think that's one reason why apologizing can be so powerful to your kids, because I've gone to my kids and said, hey, I didn't handle that situation very well. I'm sorry. I'm really tired today, or I'm just feeling really stressed and overwhelmed. I shouldn't have acted like that. That can be really helpful in helping your kids to build self-confidence and learning it's okay to make a mistake. We can repair.
Yeah, moms and dads, what you're saying to yourself in the mirror is modeling exactly what your children are going to say to themselves in the mirror. If mom's always talking about her body weight or body image being, something that she doesn't love or want, children are going to become very critical of their own body image. If dads are constantly telling themselves that they're dumb or saying terrible things about themselves, their children are going to say terrible things about themselves. And so that modeling piece that you're talking about becomes really critical. And another piece that I find valuable is that we want to praise character and not achievements and popularity. Like, oh man, you're friends with everybody at school, or things of that nature, but focus more on, man, that must have been really tough when you stood up for Sally. That takes a lot of courage. Courage must be important to you. I think that's great that you had the courage to stand up to her. So we develop the character within themselves, and that's where the confidence will come. It'll never come through popularity and achievement, because then they'll think that that's what it's based on and continue trying to build it from that foundation, which is definitely not a solid foundation for them.
Yeah, or things like, you do seem to have a lot of friends and you seem to be well liked, and I notice how kind you are to people. I think people appreciate your kindness, and your kindness makes other people want to be around you, and that's a great thing. And so again, you're encouraging a character trait of kindness, not popularity. It's not I'm being liked at all costs, or I have to be liked at all costs. It's people like me because I'm kind. And kindness is certainly a trait that we can develop. So as you were talking about self-criticism, I had a good example of this. So when my oldest I believe she was in second or third grade, and we're in the car driving to school one morning, and she says from the back seat, she goes, "Mom, you're kind of skinny, right?" And I'm sitting here thinking in my head, okay, where is this going? Where did this come from? And I said, yeah, I kind of am. And yeah, you're right. I do have a bit of a tummy, and, but I've given birth to 3 kids. And anyways, and so I told her, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but what I do remember saying is the important thing is that I'm okay with my body. I'm comfortable with how I look. And I can admit that's just a little bit of a fib, because I do struggle with self-image sometimes. And I think everybody does. But I wanted her to understand that the general shape of our body isn't what's important. It's what we're telling ourselves about our body. It's what we're doing to take care of our body.
Yeah, I agree. I think that loving ourselves is such a critical piece, regardless of what we look like and what challenges we may have with our physical appearance. If, we're going bald or we have a big nose or whatever that might be, we want to teach them to love ourselves and every bit of ourselves. And I love, Selina always reminds us that, we need to love every bit of ourselves, even the parts that might not be so desirable to the world. We want to love it. It's part of who we are. It's part of what makes us us. And I think that fits back in with helping our teens to find belonging and not fit in. We belong because of who we are, not because we have the right body shape or the right amount of money or whatever it might be.
Well, and really, it's even if you didn't belong anywhere, are you going to be okay with yourself? Do you love yourself? Are you happy with who you are? That's really where it's going to come and get that confidence, is if you can get to a point that you're happy with who you are and love yourself and are there for yourself. Do what you say you're going to do for yourself. And then you will have the self-confidence.
And I think it's important to help our children learn how to experience disappointment and rejection, because that's really a big part of life, right? As adults, guess what? We're not for everyone. And that's okay too. Even in this world of coaching and counseling and mental health, we might go seek help for something we're dealing with, and we may not connect with a counselor or a coach or a therapist or whatever we're looking for. And that's okay, because we're not for everyone. And so we look for those that we can connect with and be a part of, but we're going to experience the rejection. We're going to experience the disappointment, and we want to reinforce our children's self-worth as they go through this. We don't need to fix it. We can't fix it for them, but we can reinforce their self-worth and show them how they belong and where their value comes from.
Eventually, everybody finds their own brand of weird, right? I mean, because I think I think we're all a little weird, or everybody is weird in some way, and it can be a very painful process. But eventually, teens, adults, you find your own brand of weird, and you find a group of people that love and accept you for who you are, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's very comforting. All right, final thoughts.
All right, here's what I have to say. The most powerful thing your teen can learn is that their worth isn't up for negotiation. Be who you are. Be true to yourself. Be your own best friend.
Yeah, and as parents, model that behavior. Model the self-worth. Focus on the character. Focus on your character and who you are as a person, and figure out where that worth comes from and continue building on that.
Yeah, I think my final thought is kids are going to put on lots of different hats, and they're going to explore lots of different things. And as parents, it's important for us to be open to that. Even when they may try out some identities that we maybe aren't so fond of and aren't so thrilled with, it's important to let your kids know that they have a safe place to explore with you, that you will always love them for who they are, and that you will always accept them. So definitely give kids space to explore identities and to explore who they are, knowing that no matter what, they have at least one safe person that they can authentically be themselves with. Okay, so next week we are going to wrap up our series on self-confidence. And so our final episode is going to be Who You Are Is Enough. And we will see you all next week. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.